Hey, welcome to the Elle Russ Show. My name is Elle Russ, and I am a #1 best-selling author and master coach. My intention is to inspire, educate, and motivate you with weekly content featuring amazing guests and solo episodes. Visit my website, elleruss.com, to learn more about me, my courses, free masterclasses, partner discounts, and much more. Enjoy the show. Erin Power is with us, an amazing fellow primal health coach, and who also happens to work at the Primal Health Coach Institute. Welcome back, I should say. We've had many conversations over the years. How are you?
I'm doing well, Elle. It's great. We were just trying to catch up. It's been a little while since we last hung out, but yeah, we've crossed paths quite a few times in our lives, haven't we?
Yeah, and we would know each other, I think it's at least a decade now, but let's talk about primal for a second. For those who are out there and are like, what is primal? What is paleo? What's ancestral? We'd start off by saying, well, they're kind of all really different words for the same thing, but why did you decide to go down the road where you adopted that lifestyle and paradigm? What happened before you going, okay, I think I need to look at this list of foods?
I was doing everything right. I was a really obedient little health nut for, my entire, teens, 20s, you name it. And I got into my 30s and it all fell apart. I just got really tired. The brain fog was unmanageable. Like the life energy drained from my body. I'm in my mid 30s and I'm trying to, become somebody and didn't have anything to give. And I was also putting on abdominal weight rapidly, which made no sense because I was in the gym exercising all the time and I was eating all my food groups. And I was kind of following this really fitness oriented eating paradigm, the many small meals thing. And it just stopped working.
The 2 to 5, the 3 meals and 2 snacks, kind of eat every couple hours.
Just constant eating. And by the way, I hated it. I hated it while I was doing it. It felt completely physically wrong. I remember this stuff vividly. I
want to talk some shit about that a little bit because people are out there still doing it. So my personal story is I also was following what they considered back to be sort of the zone. Eat every 2-3 hours, keep your insulin steady kind of thing. What they don't tell you later, side note, everyone, is that if you look at the end of his book, really it wasn't about that athletes were performing off of that. They were also supplementing with high amounts of fat. So they failed to mention that. I had a friend who was getting the zone delivery at the time, and they judge your macros and they weigh you and they do all this stuff and they come to your house and they did all this stuff. And my friend would go to the gym every day and lift weights. And, we were like 30 then. And my friend says to me one day as he's eating one of his meals, he's like, I think I have to call them because I know this sounds strange, Elle, but I feel like my muscles are eating themselves.
Oh my.
And then it wasn't until I met Mark and Brad and whole primal thing when it's like, their muscles were catabolizing. And that's exactly what his feeling was accurate. It wasn't about the level of nutrition possibly, but it was about this paradigm. And I hated it. It's like, who wants to eat little things here and there? I want to sit down and have a huge fucking meal. So you rant on it.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's so wild. One of the sound bites that I've been telling my clients lately, and we'll get into this once we get kind of past the origin story phase, but I've been really anchoring to this idea that metabolism responds to signal more than math. So we get deep into math, the calories or the grams of whatever macro or the portion control bits and pieces or whatever it might be. And to me, it's a really obtuse system for an elegant body system, right? It's an obtuse sort of mathematical nutritional system for a system of the body that's very elegant. And so like that's interesting that your friend said that because I was also becoming skinny fat, just eating and eating and eating and training, but certainly not reaping any appreciable body composition changes that I was enjoying. So, I became pre-diabetic is the sort of genesis of all this. I became pre-diabetic and my doctor said, well, it happens. Could because of what you're eating, could because of stress, could because of sleep, lifestyle. She threw all these things at me that were actually kind of ahead of her time, quite frankly. She's a regular Western medicine doctor. And this is 15 years ago. And she's kind of given me this whole big picture. And ultimately came down to me rejecting that diagnosis. I just said, it doesn't make any sense. Why would somebody like me who's doing everything right succumb to this? Why am I feeling so bad? I'm a young woman. I'm in my mid 30s. So
Right? Like
this
it's
is
just like diabetes just happens.
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's almost sort of how it was. I don't want to give this doctor too much credit because she kind of did just throw her hands up and say, well, anyway, there you go. Have a nice
Right.
day. But this is the most embarrassing thing. And I hope like Mark and Brad and Rob Wolf and all these guys never hear me say this out loud. But I was so frustrated that I actually Googled, how did cavemen eat? Like, okay, I had
Okay,
never.
that's really interesting that you just like, did that just come up in your mind? Like, or did you already know about paleo stuff?
No, this was my indoctrination. And the thing is, my whole life I'd never evoked the idea of a caveman before, right? But what it was like, I'm following these contrived sets of rules and it's not working. Wait a second. There must be some kind of like operating system here. There must be some way this thing is supposed to work. This thing being my body. This thing is supposed to work in a certain way. How is it supposed to work? Was ultimately what I was trying to get to. Sort of what's our biochemical like ancient programming. And so I went down the caveman route, which is super embarrassing. But, obviously it brings up paleo, which I think was probably relatively, well, it was really quirky and new at the time. Now it seems super normal. Like I just
Yep.
feel like way too normal because I'm only paleo. I'm still old school paleo. I didn't even go carnivore. um, so that's where I found it. That's where I found it. And then, of course, as you know, and anybody who's gone down this route knows, once you start diving into it, it's just like, man, this makes a lot of sense. And like you mentioned a second ago, this idea of like a big feast, right?
Oh,
And that
my
was one of
favorite.
the, yeah, that was one of the things for me. It's like a human is a feasting and then fasting animal,
Mm-hmm.
not
It's
a
it's
grazing
the
animal.
principle of the guy that wrote the Warrior Diet. Very similar. He's like, hey, you'd eat a little bit, maybe a tiny bit during the day, a little something maybe, but then you'd be by the fire at night, gathered around, having a big long meal. And his whole argument was you could eat like even more calories in one feeding window like that than all of the ones if you spread it out and have a better result with the one eating with the one
Mm-hmm.
eating window, even if the
Mm-hmm.
calories and the macros were the same. And I remember back then, it was a long time ago. I had a roommate at the time who was 56 and she was struggling with some fat and stuff, and she lost a ton of weight following the warrior. But essentially, it was primal intermittent fasting. It's what she was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I just had no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really, I think you have to be relatively mildly open-minded to the fact that, our bodies are running this ancient technology. And if we can just sort of anchor to how it's meant to work and how it worked for millennia, we get to quieten a lot of the noise. The only problem is that the noise is so noisy. Like the wellness, health, fitness, diet industries are super noisy. And I don't know about you as a coach, but me as a coach, one of the big things that I do with my clients is deprogram or encourage a certain measure of ignoring what they're hearing and tuning back into the ancient wisdom of the body, which sounds really kooky when I say it like that. And I'm not a kook, but there's something very simple in anchoring to that. And so my health coaching company is called Eat Simple because it's like, guys, this can be a lot simpler if you
It
just lean in.
actually is quite simple. And what's so funny is it seems so complicated. Like one of the things I think is complicated that just came up in my brain that I've mentioned like before is the idea that people, when they go about some new dietary thing, they feel like every meal has to have 15 different colors of the rainbow. Like I wasted so much food back then trying to
Mm,
do this. And I kind of look at it like a primal perspective. How's your week look? How's your month look?
yes.
Right? You know? And so I think if you're out there right now, I think Erin and I are giving you permission to look at your veggies and all the other stuff throughout the week. You don't have to try to pack in every color into every meal. And that gets frustrating and annoying and time consuming. And then you just give up and vegetables go to waste. And I just remember being like, this is too hard. But then having this new way of thinking about it, meeting Mark, going on the primal train like you, totally different ballgame.
Hmm. Yeah. And the thing about hanging with Mark is that he's so non-dogmatic about food. He just kind of floats through life doing whatever, making, food choices in the moment. But I think you brought up something that I always think about too, which is this idea that's really been popularized in diet programming, which is that, we have this daily sort of interval, like every day you must eat the rainbow, and every day you must eat this many grams of whatever and this many calories.
Yep.
And I just don't think our bodies run like our bodies do run on a 24-hour circadian clock. I deeply believe in that. And to be honest with you, circadian rhythm is a big part of my program, but that our fuel needs somehow, or fuel slash nourishment needs somehow reset to zero because the clock strikes midnight is goofy. It doesn't even work. It doesn't work that way. Like the body is, its nutrient needs are very much in flux. And I really believe, and I've had to practice this over 15 years, that if I just pay attention and trust the signals of my body, it will tell me what it needs. And I know this idea of trusting your body or listening to your body has become a little trite. I know it's like, oh, listen to your body. But that is one of the sort of hallmarks of what I try to get my clients to do. And I think it's a hallmark of, in some ways, the ancestral health approach too.
It's a benefit of it. It's an absolute benefit of it, I think, because if I listened to my body, I would have said years ago when I was a sugar burning disaster, I would have said, well, my body is saying donuts, right? But tell us a bit about, I mean, look, I know you're talking to me, but let's talk to the people out there. Tell us a little bit about how someone can see primal paleo, sort of just an intro, little mini lecture on that, but then how we can become fat adapted so that we can sense what our body really needs, if you know where I'm going.
I do. The way I like to think about ancestral health, and I just kind of have to give so much credit to Mark and Rob, who are the two guys that really, guided me into it. But, you and I, we've been practicing it now for a while. So we've kind of got our own spin on the interpretation, which is really neat. And so I'm just kind of framing it as this species appropriate diet, which resonates with a lot of people who honestly have pets. Okay. So you have pets. Hang with me on for a second. We have pets, we have dogs, we have cats, I have horses, right? All of these animals have their species appropriate diet. And if left to their own devices, animals thrive in nature. And we're animals and we thrive in nature and we have a species appropriate diet too. So really it comes down to what is human food. And so I really do lean on, especially when I'm bringing clients through, on what human food consists of, which is Mark's big list: meat, fish, poultry, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds. If you're tolerant to dairy, some dairy in there as well. And then of course, sensible indulgences. And then the sort of parenthetical is the stuff we don't need or want or never needed in our diet, which is these sort of commodity crops, the grains and the beans, and then of course the dodgy oils, which are present in processed foods. And everybody already knows processed foods are bad for them. Nobody needed a health coach or a nutritionist to tell them that. That's old news. You already know that. But I lean on.
But you know what? Can you scare us all a little bit about the seed oils? Just tell people why using corn oil or is not something you want to do.
The big thing for me the scariest part of those oils for me is that they're completely foreign and our bodies have no biochemical processes to deal with them. So once they're in, there's just no way to kind of get rid of them, use them. We don't have the machinery in place to dispel it. And, so many essential parts of our body are made of fat. Every cell membrane, our whole nervous system made of fat. And so bringing in these what's, commonly referred to as frankenfats, is just really structurally super damaging for the body. And we have no recourse to really mend from it. The inflammatory nature and sort of the immunogenic nature of this can be really just inflammatory and damaging to folks. I will tell you though, that sometimes I do take a bit of a temperate approach to the seed oil thing. It's not my number one crusade, mostly because, and hear me out on this, but it's because when I'm dealing with people in their lives, my clients, there's an element of doing the best we can.
Yeah, not to be scared of every single, like if you're out and you just can only grab that thing and it happens to have, right, then okay.
Yeah. It's sort of what the things we're exposing ourselves to chronically make a big difference, but the occasional exposures, we can let a few of them slide. There's a sort of this B- level of healthy compliance that I think we can aim for that gets the job done.
As a health coach, what are some common objections or things people feel they can't do? And then would love to hear the 180 that they make when they're like, wow, when they are satiated and they're like, oh my God, I was just on the wrong paradigm. Thanks, Erin.
Mm-hmm. I was chatting with you before we pressed go on this episode that I've been on Zoom all day today since 6 o'clock this morning, and it's now 2 p.m. my time. And this has been pretty consistent since the start of the year because we're in the early part of January here. So the point is I'm having a lot of conversations with people who are exploring potentially working together in a coaching relationship. So this is all very tip of the tongue for me because I'm hearing from people what they're worried about, what they've tried that didn't work, what they don't believe in. People come to these calls really having tried a million things. And what's really interesting is a couple things that come to mind. So first of all, maybe 2 years ago, the thing everyone had tried was Weight Watchers and The Zone, right? Or Beachbody used to have these little portion control containers. And that was what I was seeing a lot of. But now I'm seeing people who have tried keto and IF and failed out of it because it wasn't, in air quotes, sustainable for them. So this talk about sustainability is really important. From my perspective, what makes any program unsustainable is that nobody guided you to sustain it. So from a health coaching perspective, that's where we shine. I think anything could potentially work if somebody taught you how to troubleshoot, problem solve.
And sometimes I think people are on this road want a little bit of permission to keep a vice or to keep it, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like even my doctor has said to people where he tells them, look, you got to go paleo because he's a paleo doctor and that's what he suggests, obviously for a lot of ailments. But the people would be like, oh, but that bagel, and he'll be like, then fine, like what, like, you know what I mean? But then do the rest, right? Like do your best.
Yeah. I had a call with a woman today who said, she told me, it took me through kind of a typical day of eating and it was all very diety, very, very diety. Like I was hungry listening to her describe her day of eating. Like,
rice cakes and like,
yeah, chicken. Oh my God. Salad with chicken. That's everybody's lunch, which is fine. As long as it's a lot of chicken, right? I mean, but she said, well, I do like a piece of dark chocolate every once in a while. And I'm thinking, wait, you don't really think that piece of dark chocolate every once in a while is why you're struggling with your weight and your health and your brain fog and kind of going through this quote unquote process of aging, which I don't think has anything to do really with any of this stuff. She was like believing that her one sort of treat was the thing holding her back. And to me, I said, I just think there's a way of eating here that can send more abundant signals metabolically into your body to encourage the body to let go of some of the stubborn fat and continuing to eat this diet food. It's just circling your metabolism has kind of circled the wagons. It doesn't really trust that there's abundance in the environment. And like we just talked about, a species appropriate diet for a human is a feasting fasting paradigm. And there's been no feasting for the last several decades. You have not feasted.
Right.
It's time to feast. You brought up the concept of satiety, which is a major anchor point for my program. The anchor point for my program is the concept of satiety. And I think what I tell my clients is this is the handshake of metabolism. So your body cues up hunger and your job is to answer back with satiety, nothing short of it, all the way to the edge of satiety. And people are so freaked out. The number one comment I get is, oh, but that's so much food, or isn't this too much food? And I have to explain the dictionary definition of the word satiety. The root of that word, sate, is enough. You're just actually eating enough food for the first time ever. And I'm sensitive to the fact that it feels like a lot because you have been under eating or just heavily micromanaging your food for, again, decades. So it's a really foreign concept to like women, midlife women, which I am. And I feel like kind of a sage elder because 15 years ago, I tapped into the wisdom of the body and I've been riding it. And what I tell my clients is I spend 0 moments of my day thinking, caring, and worrying about what I eat at all. Like even seed oils. Am I going to go to the local pub and have an order of chicken wings that I know they cooked in some gross
I'm going to do that. Sure.
Yes, I am. And I'm not going to remotely belabor that decision. Right. So it's what's really foreign for people is believing that it's possible to go through life without food absolutely in the front of their brains at all times.
Well, that's the thing I talk about in the paleothyroid solution and in general being on the wrong paradigm and then hypothyroid is when I was back then, though, before hypothyroidism hit me and I was fit doing all the wrong things, but I was struggling inside, starving, borderline eating disorder, like just Overeaters Anonymous, and I remember having this thought like in my head because I was really thin. People would come up to me and go, "Oh, you obviously work out. Can I ask you a question?" And like the greatest compliment at the time, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And yet I was suffering inside, and I thought to myself, "Am I the only like? Are all the other people that are fit out there? Are they also like obsessing about food? Is it just me?
Right.
How is this?" And it was so strong. And I remember thinking, oh my God, is this going to be the rest of my life where
I
every
know.
2 hours and I'm bargaining with myself with weird
Mhm.
eating disorder kind of behavior? Like, oh, if I get to the parking lot and I get a spot, I can get the donut. I was making deals with my, like, it was horrible. And we'll just shout out to Mark Sisson here on the Mark's Daily Apple blog he had for years, the Friday success stories at the end.
Mhm.
Even if they're like, "Ooh, I cured my skin disease, I got rid of my heart failure," whatever the thing was, they also said, but the best thing was that I no longer obsessed with food. I didn't
Mhm.
think it was possible.
Yeah.
I think I pretty much spend most of my life there until
Mhm.
now. I mean, until the past many years of being paleo. It's a, it's damn freedom beyond. Listen, if you're out there, this stuff works when you get fat adapted. It really does.
It does. And it's hard to, I have a hard time articulating it. I have to really, what I should do someday is like really set aside some time to think through how to articulate to somebody what it feels like when your whole day isn't ruled by how much of what am I supposed to eat and when.
Right.
Because when you're living in that freedom, it's, although I'm sure you remember it vividly what it felt like to be in it, I remember vividly what it felt like to be in it, but trying to articulate what it feels like to be out of it is really difficult. And it's, I always wonder, do people believe me when I say that you don't have to go another second of your life with this stupid fixation on food and diet? Like you can just be a normal person. In fact, I asked that question to somebody. I can't remember who it was. It might have been my client community. I was like, what is normal eating? Just somebody throw some definitions at me. What is normal eating? Like it was just crickets. Nobody knows what normal eating is. And I think what normal eating is when your
That's
body
difficult.
cues up hunger, you answer it with a species appropriate diet to satiety. And that's it.
I don't feed my dog lettuce
Right.
because that's not right for him. We don't feed a horse a ribeye. It's not
Right.
it's not what their genes are dictating of them. Um, let's talk. What I want to impart on the audience for the new paleo people, and this is why you need a paleo primal coach like Erin versus trying to go read a book and figuring it out yourself. Because I'm telling you, you will not figure it out. Because I didn't figure it out. Right away. I had to
Mhm.
literally ask the expert, the guy who wrote the book.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things, and again, feel free when I'm done to highlight or you know what I mean, expound on this. But paleo is not just a food list, right?
Hmm.
Because if you followed a paleo food list, but you were eating every couple hours, bad call. If you were following a paleo food list, but then also were doing extremely glycolytic workouts every single day, right? Like I was doing hot yoga 5 days a
Hmm.
week. Okay, that kind of stuff, or you're hauling ass up the mountain, not working at a fat burning heart rate pace, then paleo will fail for you because paleo is not just the eating paradigm, it is a movement. You get where I'm going with this. It's
I do.
more than that. And so I know people were like, well, I tried paleo, it didn't work. And I'm like, yeah, but did you do it right? And usually when I ask them a bunch of questions, it turns out they didn't. They just looked at the food list.
Yeah.
Can you expound there on any of that?
Well, I can. I have like an anecdote, and I really, I'm going to keep this as anonymous, obviously, as possible. Although I highly doubt this person will ever listen to this. But you riff on this stuff maybe on your socials, in your Instagram stories, and people pick up a little bit of what you're saying and talking about things like to your point, eating, moving, living in accordance with sort of our genetic program, our DNA, our ancient DNA, which remembers our DNA remembers what life was like before we got into this sort of only recent approach to diet and exercise. So I'm talking about this stuff. And for example, I was out for a walk one day and I said, well, I'm going for this walk. And it's not because I'm trying to get my 10,000 steps. And it's not because I'm trying to burn the calories from lunch. And it's not because I'm trying to hit a certain heart rate. It's just because I have a break in my day and the sun is out and I'm a walker because I'm a human. And so by taking this walk, I'm just, tapping into my sort of a restful parasympathetic nervous system state. Expressing my healthy human genes. I'm getting a little UV exposure from the sun, even though there's like no vitamin D in the sun right now because it's dead winter. Anyway, this woman who comments on my Instagram all the time, kind of chimed in and said, I don't think I'm your ideal audience because I work out really hard in the gym. And when you work out really hard in the gym, you have to eat differently. And I was like, oh, first thing you got to do is stop working out really hard in the gym. And I know the kind of work has this person's
She's the Mark Sisson story where he goes to the gym and the guy's pounding it on the cycling machine and he goes, well, are you training for something? And the guy goes, I just love to eat. Mark's like,
yeah.
really? You're gonna, yeah.
But right, that was part of my origin story as well. I'm a fitness instructor. I have been since I was 18 years old. I teach black hole group fitness classes because they're fun as hell. But I used to do 16 of them, and now I do 3. And I do the 3 because they're fun. But I did the 16 because I felt like that was how you stay super fit and ripped and have a six pack, and that's all I cared about at the time. And then, of course, look, it didn't work. Now I'm teaching 3 classes a week and taking long ass slow leisure walks, and my body composition is better, and my body doesn't hurt all the time, and I'm not starving hungry, and I'm not in this weird ass relationship with exercise and movement. I mean, I love the ancestral approach because it's so anchored to our ancient DNA, but I also love it because I don't got time for that shit anymore, quite frankly.
Well, I also love it because you can lose 40 pounds sitting in a wheelchair, like I know several people have. Like you don't, because what we've learned is really 80% of your body composition is what you're putting into it. And of course, there's other factors. It's just the right way in which you're putting things into it.
That's such a good point. So the number of women I speak to who are tired. Okay, so I'm speaking to midlife women. So they've gone through the gauntlet of parenting, and now they're in their 40s, and now they got these perimenopause symptoms, and whatever else they're hustling a career, and they're tired, and probably they're also tired because they're metabolically effed. Quite frankly, like that's a symptom of just kind of being metabolically inflexible, shall we say? Mm-hmm. So they're tired and they'll say to me, I know I need to exercise more. Like, I'll try, but I don't know. How much exercise do I need to do on your program? And I'm like, oh, 0. You don't have to do any. Like, whenever it feels like you want to, go for a walk. Or if you feel like you want to pick up some weights, nice. But you don't actually have to initiate an exercise program in this eating paradigm, because the eating paradigm is going to do the work that you're looking for, the weight loss you're looking for, and the improvement in your energy and mental clarity and vibrancy is coming from food. And I've seen it time and again. Once we start feeling better, we have access to more energy, life energy. Well, now we want to go lift some weights or take a walk or take up tennis or whatever the thing is we missed doing. I lost all of my abdominal weight when I got my prediabetes diagnosis lying on the couch because I had a bad car accident at the time. And I had to quit teaching my 16 fitness classes a week for 6 months while I healed. And I lost 40 pounds of abdominal fat lying on the couch.
I mean, yeah, it is really amazing. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love, I just want to bring this up for the people listening who we might have glossed over a couple of things. One of the things I wanted to talk about was how it's possible that Erin was like a fitness coach and doing the right paradigm of calories and, stuff, and yet became pre-diabetic. Mm-hmm. And the answer to that is carbohydrates. And so we have such a type 2 epidemic in this country. And I think the most pressing story is probably the Peter Attia story from years ago. He did a TED Talk, and if the audience doesn't know it, you can look him up. Attia is his last name, but he kind of breaks down into tears when he talks about it, because he was a doctor who was like Erin, doing all the right stuff at the gym, doing all the things, eating from the list, thinking all the healthy stuff, and he was super fit and buff, and he was really looking down and judging a diabetic patient who was coming in to get like a limb amputated or something amputated, and he was thinking to himself like, like, why doesn't you just stop? You know what I mean? Like eating, right? Like just judging, until he himself was pre-diabetic when he got his blood work. And he was like, how is this possible?
Right.
And this happens with a lot of athletes and we've seen this over the years, because they are fit and it looks like they're, quote, getting away with it on the back end, but they are carbing up and over-carbing themselves so much they are punching the shit out of the pancreas, who eventually gets pretty pissed and wants to stop doing its job. And so it doesn't matter if you wake up and have 150 carbs in a drink and then go run it off. So the whole idea with Primal is like, you don't want to ingest all this glucose that then you're going to have to burn, right? And then you become a sugar burner. And so carbs, no matter who you are out there, that's why so many people, unbeknownst to them, get themselves pre-diabetic. I also was one of them too. And there's only one way to reverse it. So, yeah, I don't know what else you might have to say on that topic, but that's very linked with with our paradigm because it's really under 150 grams of total carbohydrates a day. And as a woman who's 5'2", that would be too much for me to do every single day, right? So, but we fluctuate. But it's a general rule of thumb. Most people are getting 300 grams of carbs or above every day, and they don't even know it because the green juice they drink is 26 carbs and they think it's healthy.
Yeah. This makes me think of an analogy that I believe Brad has used. It's this. Have you heard the two campfires analogy? Has he
Yeah, it's a
shared
great
that?
one. Oak
Isn't
log
it?
and the
Yeah. So we have the twigs and paper campfire, and we have the big birch logs, whatever. The thing with the sort of carbohydrate um, reliance, I guess we'll say, that sort of dietary approach, which I definitely was because I was exercising so much, and the conventional wisdom at the time was, exercise is fueled by carbohydrates. So if you're going to go crush 16 hours of fitness classes, you better be eating a lot of pasta, which I was, and oatmeal and toast and sandwiches and all healthy stuff, in air quotes, but just tons and tons of it. But I'm just throwing little twigs and paper on this campfire. I'm never letting the fire roar. The thing with the twig and paper campfire is you got to tend to it constantly. You're constantly scrounging for more twigs, more paper, more twigs, more paper. So that
And
speaks
it's a
to
dirty burning fuel, which is the other part of that.
very
There's a
true.
lot of smoke. And so in the body, then there's a lot of like free radicals, glycation, and other things that go on, where that oak log, that's sort of steady, smooth, burns
Mhm.
all night, minimal smoke, right? That's kind of the idea of running a body based on more fat and protein than the
That's right.
carbohydrates. So
Yeah.
that's something, I think that's a great way to look at it when they brought that up. I think it was in the keto reset diet that
It
they did.
was. And I love this analogy in so many reasons because it speaks to substrate. So you can have a fast, cheap substrate like twigs and paper, or you can have a rich, reliable substrate like a birch log, which, by the way, this is very present for me because it's winter in Canada and I live in a drafty cottage and I'm running a birch fire for 6 months just so I don't die of hypothermia. And that thing burns and I can ignore it for hours. Doesn't that sound familiar? I can ignore it for hours and then every now and then I got to go throw a big old log on there and I'm good to go, feasting and fasting.
That's
But
right.
one thing that really, I just want to mention this because this has become really a crusade of mine, which is the idea of like when we're running this high fast carbohydrate approach, we do run the risk of becoming insulin resistant because we're just flooding the body with glucose and insulin and it's a whole mess. And so the cell insulin receptors kind of slam the door shut and then it's very hard to just function. You just get fat and low energy and all this stuff. And most people that I'm dealing with are mild to moderately insulin resistant. Obviously, as a pre-diabetic, I was severely insulin resistant. But I really believe that in addition to the substrate, the frequency of my eating was contributing to this as well, right? So going back to what we talked about earlier. Here I am grazing every 90 minutes on some little stupid bodybuilder Tupperware meal, and it was all healthy food, steamed carrots was my treat. Oh my God. And like rice and ground turkey and all this stuff. You get the deal. But I was eating it all the time, irrespective of hunger. So when I think about it, like the cells, the beautiful cells of our body are really the ones that are kind of in a way demanding the fuel. They send the hunger signal to the brain. We feel it in our stomachs. We eat, wash, rinse, repeat. But if you're just constantly eating and constantly dumping fuel into the blood when the cells never ask for it, of course they're going to slam the door shut. So I actually think meal frequency is a contributing factor to the insulin resistance
Yes.
epidemic that we're seeing.
I know someone who, and look, if some modality works for you and you're doing great, great. But I know someone in my family does Weight Watchers and they swear by it because they lost like 25 pounds or something.
Yep.
And they also it's their mental nature to love to go in and like calculate their points and like the whole thing. And I get it. There's people that have the apps with macros and this is how they keep on track. I don't use any of those things, but I get it. If that's a tool. However, they wake up, they eat like a big bowl of oatmeal with blueberries and then yogurt and like, okay, and then here's the thing. By 11 a.m., they're already really hungry. And so
Mm-hmm.
one time I made the suggestion to him, I said, listen, you got really not a lot of protein going on at all in the morning. That's just a carb. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
a carb blast. I said, why don't you throw some unflavored collagen at the very minimum into you know what I mean? Like do a little something. They did. And then literally after like a few days of doing it, they were no longer hungry suddenly at
Yep.
11 a.m. It's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So speaking of satiety, right? We threw something in there. I did, knowing that it might help with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it did. And again, to show also how off that paradigm can be too. It's still sort of, I still see them struggling. You know, one of the things that's tough is like, I love cakes, fucking cupcakes. Like I used to be like, I wouldn't even be an ice cream person back then. I'm like, I'm major pastry, like that was my thing. But, and I never thought in my mind that I would ever not want it. Not to say that I haven't had a bear claw every now and then and gone to town on some donuts, 100%. But never thought that I wouldn't be like constantly in life, never be able to resist or feel like, and I never have that feeling anymore.
Yeah.
I make the decision when I'm feeling like having a big donut when I want the donut. But if
Yeah.
I'm around a ton of donuts every day, I don't always want the donut. You know what I mean? That's a big
I do.
difference.
Yeah,
And
you can
so,
peacefully
yeah.
coexist. You peacefully coexist. I was thinking, you made me think of a client that I work with. I put this on my Instagram feed because it sounds crazy sensationalistic, but the headline is here are some results from a client after one day on my program. So the very first day of the program, I said, okay, here's all I need you to do for today. All you have to do for today is when your first hunger of the day shows up. I don't care when it is, whenever you feel your first hunger of the day, I want you to go and make like a really like diner style breakfast, bacon, eggs, sausage, whatever, ham, whatever you have, like protein, predominantly protein. Have a dish of berries on the side if your heart desires, but like just try this out. Just go, cook up some meat and eggs for breakfast. And she was game to try it. And she reported back the next day and said that was the first time that she didn't mindlessly snack all day at her desk and didn't binge eat basically crackers and chips in front of the TV before bed, which were the two things she wanted help with. She thought she was completely stuck in her opinion, a mindless eating or boredom eating paradigm. And to me, it's like, no, you're just hungry, girl. You're just hungry. We
Yeah,
just fed
because the
you.
brain is going, yo, you didn't satiate me, and now I need some more shit because you just gave me a few carrots. Like
That's
what? I
right.
got nothing. Yeah.
You get stuck in the twigs and paper paradigm. We throw a birch log on the fire and it changes rapidly. In fact, one of the clients that I onboarded today, um, she describes herself as people always describe themselves as having this completely unmanageable sweet tooth, or they'll even self-diagnose themselves as being addicted to sugar. Now, granted, I get that some people are, but the people I'm talking to are not. Like I'm not a sugar addiction coach. People come in and say, I think I'm a sugar addict. And I'll say, no, I think you're just hungry. And I'll say, just wait for your sugar cravings to spontaneously vanish. And they do.
They do. And then blueberries are really extra sweet, whereas before you were like,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't enough. I need the bear claw or whatever it
That's
is.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, your palate changes. I think that's really interesting too. I've had clients say, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but I had to do a lot of thinking and reading on this because people would say it just doesn't even taste good anymore. Like I had my
Oh,
favorite cookie and it was disgusting. I couldn't even finish it.
yeah.
Like our palate changes when we change metabolically and we're better at burning, fat, and we're less reliant on these twigs and paper, this sugar. The palate even quietens the call for sugar. Like to me, the palate is a metabolic gatekeeper. You're craving sugar at the palate because you're burning sugar. As soon as
Yep.
you stop burning sugar, your palate's going to say, okay, no more of that. We're good. And so it tastes different.
Yeah. Same thing went for me for some favorite snacks or things where now I would be like, ew, I'll never do that. Like I'll never do that again. Gross. Can't believe I ever ate that.
Yeah. Or, for me, like here's an example. I love one of my favorite treats, and I'm not even really a dessert person, but if I were going to have dessert, it's going to be baklava. I love baklava.
Oh my God,
Right.
it's so good. I love baklava.
Oh my God. Right. Like, is there a more perfect? I'm sorry. Is there a more perfect dessert? It's the most perfect thing.
I grew up in
So,
Chicago. We had a huge Greek town. I'm a huge fan of baklava and all Greek
okay.
food. Yeah.
See, I feel like I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel here in Calgary, Alberta to find good baklava. But if I'm going to go get baklava, I'm going to track down the Greek bakery and I'm going to buy freshly made baklava and I'm going to just enjoy every bite of it. 10 out of 10 food experience. I'm not going to go. They sell baklava at my local grocery store. They ship it in from who knows where, maybe Chicago for all I know, but it's not fresh. It's not homemade. It's not, I'm going to go and have the full experience, the 10 out of 10 experience. Because you know what? I'm a hedonist. I love to treat myself. Oh, hell yeah. I'm all about it. And I think humans are. I really do think humans are pleasure driven animals, but we're not really getting pleasure from the Oreo. That's not yummy. That's objectively not yummy. It's not rich.
Yeah.
It's not a hedonic food pleasure. right. So sometimes people like in our circles too, and this is where I push back even in our own echo chambers. The idea of hedonic food urges is sometimes looked down upon, like, oh, you weak human, how dare you have hedonic urges? And it's like, no, that's how it works. That's how the dopamine system is primed, baby. Like we
Right.
are. There's a way to harness it or to, at least tap it in a sensible way so you don't feel like you're living this like really hardcore disciplined diet or life, which I just don't want to do anymore, quite frankly.
No, and it's funny because like my friend Daniel and I, who used to work for Primal, and he's like pescatarian and very healthy and low body fat, and like we're both fit and whatever. We walk all the time, and we talk about when we do indulge with treats, we call it chuckers, where we're like, we'll get whatever you get like a box of something, a bag of something, and then you just kind of take a bite of each one. It gives you that like mental thing, like you're eating a
Oh
bunch of
man.
it, and then chuck it, like whatever you got to do. And some people would be like, "Don't waste that," and I would be like, "No, I'm wasting it." I'm gonna
Yeah.
waste it. I'm gonna waste
Oh
the
my
box of
God.
donuts, right? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
totally
Well,
down for that
that's
because
how I
it
made it
feels
through the
better than
holidays.
taking a bite out of just one, right? And so it's just such a funny mind trick. But like when we talk about eating garbage, my friend and I always joke around that we just institute the chuckers, the
I'm
chuckers.
into it. I want to be on Team Checkers because that's my sister sent me a bunch of baking for Christmas, which is really nice. And I, love me some shortbread, but I only need one or two of those. I don't need 58 of them. So I had my one or two shortbreads, and then I was like, okay, well, this is going in the garbage. I don't need 56 more shortbread cookies in this
That's
house.
right. Just throw it out.
Honest.
I'm not one of those like, no, well, it's around or don't let it go to waste. I'm like, no, no, let it go to waste.
Right, because if it's around, like we know this from the neuroregulation of appetite, which is also very an ancestral concept to consider. I mean, Rob Wolf wrote the book on that, Wired to Eat, which is like if your brain knows it's there, this highly easily stored, hyper palatable food, the honey hive in air quotes from hunter gatherer days. When hunter gatherers came across the honey, they didn't moderate it; they binged on it.
Went to town on it because they were
That's
like,
right.
what? This patch? This patch we've
Mhm.
discovered? Yeah.
Yeah. And so our brains are wired for that. If it's there, you're gonna crush it. Like I don't bring if I'm gonna eat potato chips, which I love by the way, I know damn well I'm not stopping till that bag is empty. So I
Mhm.
decide what size bag I'm eating, or I join the chuckers and I just take my bowl of chips and chuck the rest.
That's
Because
right.
it's ridiculous to imagine that you're gonna somehow out willpower your biology.
Yeah. And then but that's where you can out willpower it by throwing it in the incinerator.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so tell us about your coaching. I know it can be from anywhere. You can coach people anywhere in the world. Tell us how people can get in contact with you and how you run your coaching, how you work with people, and what you have to offer of your wisdom. And honestly, this is too short, so I'd like to have you back this year to maybe talk about a couple specific paleo primal topics that we can get even deeper into because I love
Mhm.
it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my program's called the Metabolic Mentorship, and I'm working with folks on truly restoring their insulin sensitivity. Because again, the people I'm working with are mild to moderately insulin resistant. So they have all the telltale symptoms. They have the punishing low energy, the ridiculous cravings, the abdominal body fat gain, this insidious fat gain that we know comes from this sort of high carbohydrate twigs and berry paradigm that we're in. And I really do have to absolve. Most of my clients are midlife women, and we've been dieting our whole lives. So they're my people. I get it.
Yep.
We're in this wrapped up in this really goofy contrived food paradigm that's completely contrary to our ancestral programming. So we bring them back to that, but not in a goofy weird caveman way, but tapping to the feeling of hunger. I want you to feel hunger. I want you to answer it with satiety. That's where I start with all my clients because nobody knows what hunger feels like and nobody sure as hell knows what satiety feels like. So let's get back to that brass tack. But I work with clients for 6 months because that's how long it takes to honestly deprogram all
Yeah.
of the bullshit.
And to really
Um,
sink it in and get it like
mhm.
again, success for sustainability.
Correct. Sustainability is the essential component. Sustainability and what's called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the necessary outcome of any coaching relationship, which means the client can do it on their own. They have the skills, knowledge, resources to do it on their own. So literally what we're doing in a coaching relationship is I'm not prescribing macros and meal plans. I'm troubleshooting scenarios. Oh, your
Right.
mother-in-law's visiting for 3 weeks. Okay, she's a pain in the ass. Great. Like we're walking through these life things that come up and we're checking them off the list. Okay, check. We solve for Christmas. Check. We solve for your mother-in-law. Let's solve for your beach vacation. Let's solve for whatever camping season. We're solving for these things so that when any scenario comes up, My clients learn how to just nourish themselves appropriately in an ancestral approach. They don't know it's ancestral. This is our little secret. I don't tell them that, by the way. And it takes 6 months for them to learn a new way of eating and to really just model it in their lives in a sustainable fashion. So I work really closely with my clients in a very high touch coaching relationship. I'm not in one-on-one mode anymore because I don't have time. So I work in small groups with my clients, but they get access to me 5 days a week. I'm always hosting open coaching calls and teaching sessions. There's a ton of education, but the support is really where a coaching relationship shines. That's where coaching relationships shine. For anybody listening who's thinking, I'm ready for a big change in my life. I want to get healthy for once and for all. I would skip the programs. I would skip the plans. I would look for a relationship with a coach.
Absolutely. Great advice. Tell us how, even though we'll put something to connect with you in the show notes, where we can find more about you in this program.
Well, I'm most active on Instagram, of course, and my handle is Eat Simple Erin. And you can find all my links out to programs and websites from my Instagram bio.
Eat Simple, and it's ERIN, just in case anyone was confused about the spelling there. Thank you so much for joining us and all of your wisdom. And you guys, if you need to get on this, if this is the new year, new you, get in touch with Erin. All right. Anything else before we go?
No, I had a lot of fun, though. It was great connecting with you.
So fun. Thanks so much. And I will talk to you soon. Hey, listeners. Over the years, a ton of companies have approached me to collaborate, but I will only promote companies whose products I believe in and that I actually use and consume on a regular basis. So let me tell you about some of my favorite companies that I can offer you discounts for. Rep Provisions, an amazing company doing incredible things for our planet, topsoil, and animals with regenerative agriculture, and it's my #1 source for quality pasture-raised meat and chicken. Visit repprovisions.com and use code L15 for 15% off. I'm also obsessed with a company called Carnivore Crisps. They make a lean, all-natural, and delicious alternative to conventional snacking, made with just real meat and real salt. Totally addictive, and my favorite ones are the beef brisket and the ribeye. Visit carnivorecrisps.com and use code PALEO10 for 10% off. I also love and regularly use Paleo Valley products. They make amazing supplements and delicious paleo products. I use the superfood greens powder, grass-fed beef sticks, the organ complex, and their bone broth bars. I love the lemon and apple. I also use their essential C complex and more. Visit paleovalley.com/promos/Elle Russ for 15% off. I also love Primal Kitchen. They make delicious paleo-approved, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and no refined sugar products. And I use them daily, from their collagen powders and sauces and marinades to their avocado and olive oil. So good, so healthy. Visit primalkitchen.com and use code L10 for 10% off. I also love paleo powder and use it almost on everything I cook. They make incredible seasoning blends, and they also have these incredible grain-free coatings that feel just like crispy breadings that you would have had prior to knowing that there's another way. So visit paleopowder.com and use code L15 for 15% off.